because I had a very nasty client on that. And in complete disgust, so Alyque happened to be walking. My desk was not very far from his office. And because the AC used to go off, his door was open, and he happened to be walking there, and he saw me working, and he just struck a chord, "What are you doing? How's it going?" And because I was so frustrated, Alyque, I don't know what to do. This guy, blah, blah, blah. You know how when you're young, you have that thing. Yeah, whatever I do, he just can't get it right. I think I'm just giving up. I think I'm going to resign or whatever. It's just, like that. So he said, "Beta, come here." He used to talk like that. "Come here," and he sat me down in his room, and I'm very grateful to him for that. And he said that he gave me, and excuse the word, but he actually used this word. So I said, "I don't know what to do." He says, "I'll tell you what you should do. Outlast the bastard." That was the saying.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Sell-Side Conversations. Today our guest is Ashish Bhasin. Ashish has been at the forefront of media and advertising for over 30 years with companies such as Lintas and Dentsu. In our conversation with him, we'll talk about how he built those businesses, opportunities and challenges while building up some memorable advertising campaigns, including how he got into advertising and much more. Ashish, welcome to Sell-Side Conversations.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you. So Ashish, let's start from the start. Can you just give us a quick background about your early days, your schooling, your childhood, your parents, sort of set a context for us?
Well, I actually started schooling in Nainital in St. Joseph's College just for a couple of years at a very young age. And then from the 4th standard onwards, I came into Bombay, and I was at the Campion School until my 10th standard. And then for the 11th and 12th, I went to Cathedral. I thereafter did my graduation from the St. Xavier's College in Bombay. And post that, I did my MBA at the Sydney Institute of Management, also in Bombay. So that was the early education, and most of it in Mumbai. Started off in Delhi and Nainital.
And your parents were also based in Mumbai at that point?
Yes, so we were originally based, I come from a family which was displaced during the partition of Pakistan and India. So my father had come into Delhi originally. That's where they were settled. And then for work opportunities, he subsequently came into Mumbai. And but for the last, I would say 50 years of 55 years, we've been in Mumbai. So most of my life I've spent in Mumbai.
And Ashish, what kind of a student were you? Were you the studious kind?
Actually, I was a good student. So in those days, to get more than 80% marks in ICSE was a big deal. I wasn't in the top 1 or 2 or 3 because, but always amongst the better students. I wasn't good in sports at all for most of my life, but most of the studies bit I was pretty good. Also coming from a family which spoke Hindi at home, and having had a few years in Nainital, which was then in UP, now in Uttarakhand, my Hindi was exceptionally good. So I had the privilege of topping ISC 12 in my batch for Maharashtra for Hindi. But generally speaking, I was a good student. It was a very different set of marks and scales. So in those days, if you got 80% and a first class and distinction, it was a big deal. Today, probably if your son got 80%, you'd be very disappointed. He wouldn't get this thing. But I would say I would be in the top 5-10 percentile for sure.
And do you think education has played an important role in your career growth?
Undoubtedly. So, you know what I feel what education does is it's not a one-to-one relationship. It's not. So I did my graduation in zoology and biochemistry. Now, that has nothing to do with advertising, which is where I spent most of my career. But it's not that. I think science really instills a discipline into you, a certain type of hard work. So your education, whatever subject you may have had, the best of leaders that I've seen are always very well-read, very diversely informed. Things like literature, history, you don't realize it. It does not have a immediate 1:1 correspondence that, okay, I've done this, so therefore it has helped me in the career. But it certainly does. Also brings in a lot of discipline. There's no substitute to formal education. I mean, you can self-educate yourself to a very large extent, but you do need that basic ingrainment. And I do feel I benefited a lot because I went to, I think, some of the finest institutions for schooling and for college. And I think it makes a humongous difference in your life.
Got you. Then how did you land up in marketing and advertising field?
Well, actually, it's very funny. So I met my wife when we were in college. We were
College sweethearts.
Sorry.
College sweethearts.
At that time, we weren't really sweethearts, but but the moment I saw her, I knew I wanted to marry her. So I was very clear.
All right.
So we were growing up together. We graduated together, and she then went on to do her MSc in life sciences and biochemistry. She even taught in St. Xavier's for a couple of years. A very relatively new course in those days was MBA, and that was the sort of flavor of the month. And I had two very close friends, and they said, "Look, we're going to do this MBA entrance exam. It's 2 weeks away from now. Why don't you also do it?" So just for a lark, I said, "Okay, let me also do it." And as luck would have it, I got in, made it through the group discussion and interview and everything. And then I was in Sydenham and Sydenham Institute of Management, and that in those days was in Bombay at least considered one of the best institutes. And then came the placement bit, right? So I had worked during my summer internship. I had worked for Citibank. I was a marketing student.
Okay.
In those days, there wasn't much marketing to do in the bank, and I thought banking is not something that worked for me. So I then applied for the next best job that came to our campus was Godrej Soaps, and in those days they gave you a red color Maruti 800, a 1-bedroom house in Vikhroli, and 5,000 rupees starting salary.
Oh, did you get the perks for the job?
This was the salary, and so it was a
car as
job.
well?
A car after 6 months or a year or something like that. So I said, "Ye chahiye," and I aced the interview, and then we had to go for like not an interview, I would say, but more like over the lunch, like a sanity check perhaps with Mr. Godrej, and he interviewed, and that was only the second time in my life I was going by local train. And then when I was coming back, maybe it was peak time or whatever, it was just
Chaos.
complete chaos. And then I said, wow, it would be really good if I got a job somewhere closer home. I used to stay, my parents were staying in Colaba at that time. So I said, that would be really wonderful if I could get it. And next day a company came to the office, and we were so unplanned in our career today, it almost sounds silly. The name of that company was Lintas. The only question I asked them was, "Where's your office?" And they said, "Express Towers in Nariman Point." I said, "Boss,
are you serious?" So your geolocation decided the career choice?
So, when journalists ask me during my career, now that I am less not in a corporate role, I can speak more freely. But when they would ask me, one would say that I'm in advertising because it's a young profession, and it is all of that. And I just love this profession, and I accidentally stumbled into it. But the real reason I'm in advertising is because Lintas's offices were in Express Towers in Nariman Point, and that was just a kilometer away from home. so that's how I got into advertising. But once I got in there, and particularly in Lintas, which was a phenomenal organization in those days. Alyque Padamsee was the CEO, and Prem Mehta was the person then the COO, who later became the CEO and the chairman. He was the one who was running it, and that was I just fell in love both with the profession and with the company, and I spent 20 long years there, enjoyed every moment of it.
So how were the initial days? I mean, the world was different, the economy was different in those. I'm assuming this is in the 80s.
Yeah, so I joined Lintas in June of 1988. India had the full liberalization impact hadn't happened. Rajiv Gandhi had started computerization. It was a very different era. TV had just about been launched. So it was
newspapers were
cinema
the main
and print
medium.
dominated. Yes, cinema and print dominated industry, and with very big names like Times of India, and with 150-year background, etc. TV was the young kid, which was just kind of coming in, and Lintas was kind of leading the charge for Surf. They had done the first sponsored program, and I got a lucky opportunity to work on Hindustan Lever, which I think is a university of marketing in many ways. Both Hindustan Lever and Lintas put together is like a university of marketing in India, and I've worked on their detergent brands for a while, and then on soaps and Liril, which was then the leading. For many years I was eating,
the
drinking.
Iconic Liril ad.
Absolutely iconic Liril. Well, the Karen Dunel ad had already been done, and but that was what I started working on, and it was an amazing experience. In fact, my colleagues my classmates used to be envious, because one of the first jobs Alyque put me onto that was go find a little girl. So there was after Karen Lunel, there was Sonali Mehta,
Okay.
and then she got married and didn't want to work further, and we had to find a new little girl. And I had this very enviable, people thought enviable task of. So Alyque just said, "Go sit in." He was very closely involved with Liril as a brand. In many ways, he and Shunu Sena, the client end, thought of themselves as fathers of the brand in many ways. So you had to clear everything with them. So he said, just go sit in coffee shops, go to Shamiana, go to St. Xavier's College, or wherever you want, just go there and just find me a unique girl who can interact with water as if she's a water baby, you know. So
Okay.
because you were trying to fill in Karen Lunel's shoes, which were very big
So that was
shoes
a
to
brief.
fill. That was the brief. And then when you found, how do you know that, how do you find some, I mean, you may tick many other boxes he had given, but how do you find that, how will she react with water? Then you have to sheepishly go up to her and say, can I do a video shoot with you in the water so that I can take the tape back to, so one of the Lintas flats, which was empty in Warden Road, I remember under the shower, one had to put her and sort of take the tape, and then they would decide whether, even to make it to the shortlist, whether, you know, her interaction with water.
And girls
how
would
it
agree
was.
to come?
Well, modeling Hindustan Lever as a brand, Lintas is a big draw.
Okay.
So it wasn't easy. That's what I said. My classmates thought what a great job you've landed up into, but it's one of the toughest part of my assignment because you're always scared somebody will come and slap you. So I mean, those were interesting days. And then the girl we finally shortlisted was Anjali Jathar, who then became the next Liril girl. So Liril, I was on that brand for many years, and I think I was lucky that I could work with Hindustan Lever, because not just for this, but a lot of my fundamentals of marketing and advertising got very solidified, you know, on a very strong platform and footing. Because of those experiences, and some of them were tough. I mean, one of the brands I was working on was Wheel. Nirma was taking Lever's pants off. Surf was a very big brand for them. Nirma had started, Kasan Bhai had launched Nirma, and then he launched Nirma Powder. So we had what we used to then call as Project Sting, strategy to inhibit Nirma's growth. That was the project name. And we were launching this, the Wheel powder and stuff. And the whole idea was that you got to take it as deep into the markets as possible, because Lever had a very good distribution system deep down in that. And then came the concept of rural marketing. So I said, we got to take it into rural. And Shunu said, have you ever been to rural India? I said, yeah, I went to Nainital. So on the way I passed by villages. He said, shut up. There's a, Lever had adopted what was then a village called Eta in eastern UP.
Okay.
He said, first you go and live there for 15 days. Then you come back and talk to me about, rural marketing. I thought that was really harsh. I mean, a South Bombay guy. I've done my MBA. When you do your MBA, you come out, you think, you're going to be a turnaround specialist the next day. And here I'm being marched off. It wasn't that easy in those days. I mean, even to get to that place, you had to change half a dozen buses. And then there was no hotel. You went and lived with somebody there, and you went to the field to do your job.
Oh my God.
And so on and so forth, right? So as a young person, you feel that that's like a punishment. But you know what I gained in those 15 days, I didn't actually finished 15, probably ran away in 10, but what I gained in that really helped me. And later on in life, I launched Linterland for Lintas, which is a rural marketing company. Did very well. I think that was the foundation of that. So in general, the learning that I had on levers, I worked for about 10, 12 years, not just in India. You know, there were countries like Burma, Vietnam, where in those days Lever didn't have marketing, they did not have an office, but their products were still selling there. So there was a company they had called Lever International, based in Bristol. They were bringing in the products there. Now nobody wanted to go to those markets, so I said, okay, I'll go and do the ads over there. So I made a mobile agency, you can say. Prahlad Kakkar was my director onto that. Chinwin Lee, who's now passed away, was the photographer for still shoots and so on. So we made like a and to cheat, because they were diving buddies, we took Johnny Pinto as the editor. He himself was a director, but so we went to Burma, made films there in very difficult conditions. There used to be curfew out there. It was completely controlled by the army. Even the
army janta over there.
Yeah, the TV station's head was a major, and after 7 o'clock there was a curfew. After 8 o'clock it was a shoot at sight.
Oh my
and
God.
If you didn't finish your edit, which was very common by 7 or 8, and you wanted to finish because there's a deadline, you had to get out of there, you had to sleep in the TV studio with all the machars on the on a patta over there, right? There was no. So we did that in Burma, Vietnam, Cambodia, quite a few of these places. So I got great experience. I thought a very holistic experience, and then. One fine day out of the blue.
So, did you volunteer for these assignments in Cambodia and Vietnam?
I don't know if I volunteered, but I mean, obviously, I consented. Otherwise, nobody sort of puts you on going there. But it was just part of your job. It just grows onto you. I was a bit adventurous. I was always.
Because a lot of people don't sort of try to do something different in their careers.
Well, whenever I got an opportunity to do something else, I always did.
Okay.
And this was just the beginning of my career, but you can see that as a pattern elsewhere. I get bored pretty quickly doing the same thing, and I generally want to try more things. And also, I feel the more things you do, the more experiences you gather, the richer it makes you, and a better leader it makes you in that sense. So I was, like they say that enthu guy. So I was to that extent an enthu guy. So, there were 40 of us who had joined that year in Lintas. Lintas had a very structured training program.
Okay.
And 40 trainees, I remember, were taken in. And we had to spend 6 months in Bombay and 6 months in one of the branches. I went to Delhi. I was sent to Delhi just so that you get an experience. So that was a proper structured program, which I think agencies really don't do it well enough these days. At the end of 3 or 4 years out of those 40, only 3 of us were left.
Oh.
At the end of 10 years...
So everybody quit. The rest 27 quit.
3 or 4 of us were left. The other more than 30 people quit or fell off the way. Advertising is a very hard business. It looks very glamorous, and
it does actually.
In the first year of my marriage, I spent more nights with John, who was the studio manager, than my wife. This is a fact, not just an anecdote that I'm talking to you about. It is hard work. It's a deadline-oriented business. It's a service industry, right? And it's under pressure, and you are at the bottom of the food chain. And it's not like today. The working conditions are very different. We had a studio manager. I remember. I won't name her. You have to type your dockets for getting any work done. So supposing I want something, and those typists would go home at 5:30 because their bus had to go or whatever, right? And after that, but client's work still has to be done. So if you hand wrote the docket because the typist is gone on that, the studio manager would say that, okay, I'll only accept it if you walk down 15 floors and walk up. Well,
really?
How come you brought a handwritten? It was almost that kind of a thing. But while you cursed it at that time, it was immense learning. And Lintas was like a family. I mean, the culture which people like Prem Mehta and all the leaders had set up, led by Alyque initially and thereafter by him. It was a very different culture. So we were all, everybody thought it was your own business, your own work to do, your own,
so everybody's empowered and
it was like the environment was created so that you would do that. And I think it's not just me. All of us went through the same grind and the same bit. But you put a coal under pressure and it becomes a diamond. I think the hard grind that we were put through did all of us well for the rest of our careers, and all those who did continue their careers, not necessarily only in Lintas, and later on many of them went to very, very senior positions.
I think today what happens is a lot of youngsters that I see don't want to be put under pressure. They sort of buckle quickly and they all want a quick fix solutions.
I'll tell you what I feel. So everybody asks you what is the key success factor in advertising, and usually if you ask someone, the answer you will get is creativity or being good with people and so on. It is all of that. But actually the key, if you look at I've had a 36-year career in advertising. When I look back, the key to success in advertising is the ability to withstand stress, because you can burn out very quickly, you can give up very quickly. It is about turning up with your A game every day. It's not about turning up with your A game one day. Right?
Correct.
So if you have to do it day in and day out, and if you can do it for 36 years, you will be at the top, undoubtedly, in whatever bit you've done. But doing that is much harder than what it appears to be. So the point I started earlier, that all my classmates and all thought there's a lot of glamour and what great fun you're having in advertising. That is not true. I mean, yes, there is some glamour, and yes, you do have, it's a young profession, you do have fun, but you go through a very, very hard grind, particularly in the initial years where you're learning, you're sitting making slides. Those days there was no PowerPoint. You were Even today, I can tell you when you sit at Peshu Wadia's thing, the headline had to be Helvetica Bold 10% condensed. And
All of those
yeah,
things.
you had to know it. If you goofed up, you're going to spend another 2 nights to make that happen. And there's a deadline which you can't miss it. So it ingrained the eye for detail, the hard work, which then helps you in many ways later on. So while there is glamour and there is a lot of fun, it is based upon understanding the basics, understanding the processes, understanding, withstanding that stress, figuring out what are the consumer insights. All good ads that you see, you may just see, a small thing like "ye le ye paise bachenge," right? He stands with me for rest of my life, or Lalita ji, or people who've created that, teams that have worked on it, or the La 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 of Liril. Even today, if I play the jingle to you or to a younger generation who's never even seen that soap or heard of that, you'll still be able to visualize that ad in your
Correct.
mind, right? That's the strength of it. That comes through insights. That comes to deep understanding of consumers that like nobody else can. And then we're lucky to have had people like Alyque, like Usha Bhandarkar, who was the creative director on many of the lever campaigns. I've learned a lot from all these people, and through the research, through the process, I think there is that hard work and grind makes you spot those insights also. So it's a combination of, I would say, advertising is one of those rare art plus science combinations.
Good. So when you talk about insights and advertising and insight into consumer psyche, how is that developed? Because today, the world is far more advanced. You have analytics, you have a lot of tools, data. I'm assuming in those days, 25, 30 years back, we weren't so data oriented. How do you know the psyche of a rural guy or a middle class guy? How do you sort of understand what his innate motivations are and then create an advertising campaign? How is that process sort of
Look, I
worked
think
out?
as far as insights are concerned, yes, there's a lot of data, and we'll come back to it. And because today it's a very different process in doing that, but it's all about knowing your consumer and connecting with your consumer. Now, there was an era of advertising where people were from South Bombay air-conditioned offices trying to sell
Correct.
soap to Meerut or Eastern UP villages, which were totally underdeveloped and unconnected.
Absolutely, yeah.
And mind you, this is like early TV eras.
Yeah.
TV had also just started coming, right? So the demand was being generated in a huge way. Everybody was watching Chitraha, Chayageet, Hindi feature film, and watching the ads on it, but the brand had to reach there and connect with them. It is all about connecting with your consumers. We used to do a hell of a lot of market visits. Actually go to this, like I told you, this example where I had to live in the,
Correct.
before I could even pick up my pen or start working on that brand, Mr. Shunu Sen, and I bless him for this. He's no more. He insisted. He said, "No, you go there. How are you coming out from Campion and Cathedral and Xavier's College? Are you going to tell me you're going to work on Wheel, which is going to work in UP and Bihar for me? First you go there and then you start talking to me, right?" And that was real learning when you interact with the consumer. I'll give you a real life example which I learned as a part of my market visits. I challenge you. You are a very intelligent, well-educated person. You will, if you are having a bath with a soap on that, you will never know what does a cost per bath. You'll never know. You probably never even know what your soap costs, right? On that, the rural consumer, particularly in those days, because they had less money in their pockets, they knew exactly what a bar of Lifebuoy would cost, or Rexona, or Lux, or Liril would cost, and they knew exactly how many baths they could have. Like, this will last to me for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks. So they knew the cost per bath. And
Wow.
we start off by thinking that, the thinking used to be that you talk down to the rural consumer. Actually, the rural consumer is smarter than the urban consumer. Not equal, smarter.
Smarter.
Because
Very value conscious.
she is value conscious. She's got limited resources to do it. She's not inhibited. I'm talking about many years ago. Today, with the with mobile phones and all, the knowledge dissemination is very different, and she has to be a lot more conscious with what she's spending, because actual money, particularly in those days, in the hands of rural consumers used to be very limited. Right? It's only at the harvest time,
Correct,
when the wages came in, etc., that they had it. So they had to be brighter and smarter, in fact, to do it. So these are all experiences you built, the insights you got by physically going there and spending time. We used to do a lot of focus groups, where you put, let's say, a group of women together, they're discussing, and through research, a lot of that. And of course, then you have geniuses of people like Usha, like Piyush Pandey, like all, these people intuitively are able to take the insight and make a magic out of that.
Got it.
Right. So it's a combination of first finding the insight, the strategy behind it, then giving it that creative twist, and then implementing it on time. So there's, like I spoke to you, it's about art and science combined.
Art and science combined.
Today things have changed. Part of that process is subsumed by data. You look at data to give you those insights, but I don't think the fundamentals have changed.
Okay.
The process has changed, but I don't think the fundamental requirement of connecting and understanding the consumer has changed.
Got it. So Ashish, then talk us through about your other parts of the experience at Lintas. So one is you spent a lot of time on Lever's account.
Yes.
Then which were the other notable accounts that you...
So after I finished my stint, it was actually, we used to have a thing called a family day, which everybody used to get together. And I remember in this family day, Mr. Prem Mehta walked up to me and he said, "Ki tu Madras jayega?" I'd done about 8 or 10 years in that. So I said, well, because we needed a head for our Madras office, which hadn't been doing very well. Those days it was called Madras. Hadn't been doing that well for a while, but had potential. We had some very good clients there. So I said, sir, मैं कभी गया नहीं हूँ. मतलब once or twice I've gone for a visit, but I have never run a branch either. I've always worked on this. It was young. I was relatively younger in my career than a branch manager would, but I'm happy to try it. And then he said, okay, go for a couple of years, show us what you're worth then, and make something out of it. So one fine day I had packed my bags. My family was here in Bombay, and the company was very good. They took care of them. I was in a Lintas flat, and they allowed them to stay, and I had a accommodation there as a branch manager. And I went there, and that was a phenomenal experience because, when you're a branch manager, it was the first time that I got the experience. When you're a branch manager or a CEO or whatever, the buck ends in you. You can't go to anybody else. The bouquets are yours. The brickbats are yours. You're
Correct.
responsible for the cleanliness of the toilets to the cleanliness of your balance sheet, as I always say, right? It's all there. It was a small office, sleepy little office, but with some very good clients. We had clients like MRF. We had clients like The Hindu. Many of them are still my friends many decades later. We did some really good work over there. And believe it or not, in 2 years, we refurbished, I redid the office. I mean, when I went there, I saw right in the middle of the office, there was a dustbin because water was leaking from the AC. I completely redid the office, revamped. The company was very supportive. And the office did brilliantly well. We almost 2.5 times more revenues, and wasn't very profitable before, made it a huge, significantly profitable branch. And in 2 years' time, not only did the branch turn around, we got Agency of the Year, which was unimaginable for us because in those days, HTA and Ugilvi was so big and so dominant there. They had brands like Ponds and, various other things. And this branch, which nobody had heard of, all of a sudden became. So that was a very good learning experience also for me because it's the first time I was independently handling an office. And I then realized that a CEO's job is more than a 24/7 kind of a job. You're never off the job. It's something or the other. Someday some municipality guy will come up. Someday some client crisis will come up, or some people issues will come up. So when you're working on a brand as an account director, etc., your whole focus is the brand, the client, the assignment on hand. As you start going more into the general management roles or leadership roles, a lot of your time goes on people management and situation management.
Correct.
Because that's key, whether it's clients or it's your own people or it's the stakeholders, government, whatever, right? So that to me was a very good compressed learning experience. In those 2 years, I think I matured as a leader a lot on that. And then I wanted to come back to Bombay because my family was in Bombay and I was basically a Bombay person. And because things were doing well, I don't think anybody was in a hurry to bring me back. so I started making noises. Hello, I'm around. My boss then was Fali Vakil. He's passed away recently. And I kept reminding him, look, I'm around. I'm there. He said, yeah, hang on. You're doing a good job. You're thinking about it. I knew he had no intent of thinking about it. And finally, I went back to Prem, and I said that, Mr. Mehta, this is the issue. It's been a long time. You guys seem to have forgotten. You said 2 years. It's now 2.5 years. And whenever I'm raising this topic, I'm not getting any. I'm just being told I'm doing a great job, but nothing else. So he said, exactly like you said, "Tu media karega?" So I said, "Look, I'm a client servicing guy." He said that, "Look, media is going to become very important," which was at that time it was like treated like a back end. The creative agency was there, and media was like the operations or the back end of it. I feel it's going to become very important. Lintas had already set up Initiative Media, and I want somebody who I can trust, a trustworthy person who can take it for us and grow it big. And my predecessor was going on a sabbatical for a while, etc. So I saw that as my opportunity to get out of Madras and come back to Bombay. So I said, of course, I'll give it I don't know anything about media, but I'm happy to give it a try. He said that we'll back you, we'll support you, and that. I had to go through a complete learning curve again. I mean, obviously, being in advertising by that time for 12, 15 years or whatever, you knew something about it, you interacted with the media people, etc. But I actually used to sit down after office with Narayan, who's now a CEO of one of the agencies in Delhi. Before that, I encountered him in Singapore. He was working for my Kera office in Singapore. But at that time, he was a young media planner. I used to sit down with him, I remember, after 6 o'clock, and he used to tell me, okay, GRP stands for this is what GRP is, this is what TRP, this is how you calculate
the
this.
basics.
Absolute basics. I was a client servicing guy, and that was great learning and great. So I actually learnt the basics of media before I could do anything over there. And then, fortunately, Initiative Media did very well. It really expanded. We won a lot of businesses, clients like LG, Bajaj, ITC in those days used to advertise. Cigarette advertising used to be allowed. They were very big, many clients on that. And it started being, more importantly, more than the business being doing it started being seen as an independent business and unit by itself. And from a department which nobody had heard of, in a short while, we became the Lintas used to have this Unit of the Year award, and we got the Unit of the Year award. So we started getting training from abroad, tools from there, optimizers, and I think it also helped me build my own media profile, because when you are in media, you're dealing with media people, and you're dealing in hundreds of crores of rupees of media transactions and stuff. So you're dealing with senior people at the other end. It helped me understand that business and built my profile well. And in a couple of years, Initiative Media just became a very powerful player in the game.
So Ashwin, I'll take you back to client servicing for a moment. Now, in client servicing, can you just tell us about what are the key attributes of a good client servicing person, by which you retain the client and grow the business? What are the things that are important over there for client servicing role?
I think one of the key things for a client servicing person to remember is that they are the voice of the brand in the agency and with the client, right? You should know your brand better than even what your client knows, because you're the voice of the consumer for the client. The client may have a sales target, which may be short term. A brand manager has a lifetime today of only 24 months. So may want to come in and do something and meet their sales target. You should know your brand so well that you are able to convince him or her to say that, look, this is what the brand needs. Equally, you have to be the voice of the client within the agency. So in the agency, you have the creative people, you have media people, you have different departments, production, etc. Who is the voice of the client in the agency? Is you. So you have to understand the brand better than the client, and you have to understand the client better than his wife does or her husband does, right? And it is all about forming a relationship and trust.
Any example where you think you were instrumental in sort of moving the needle for a brand?
And I'll give you two examples, a bad example and a good example. Okay. There was one day I was working on a little late in the day, maybe 8 o'clock or something. And I was really down. It was maybe 3-4 years, 5 years into my thing, because I had a very nasty client on that. And in complete disgust, so Alyque happened to be walking. My desk was not very far from his office. And because the AC used to go off, his door was open, and he happened to be walking there, and he saw me working, and he just struck a chord. What are you doing? How's it going? And almost because I was so frustrated, I don't know what to do. This guy, blah, blah, blah. You know how when you're young, you have that thing. Yeah, whatever I do, he just can't get it right. I think I'm just giving up. I think I'm going to resign or whatever. It's just, like that. So he said, "Beta, come here." He used to talk like that. "Come here," and he sat me down in his room, and I'm very grateful to him for that. And he said that he gave me, and excuse the word, but he actually used this word. So I said, "I don't know what to do." He says, "I'll tell you what you should do. Outlast the bastard." That was the saying. And when I think back, it was such a valuable advice, because at that moment, out of that frustration, had I given up my job as a client servicing person there, my career, I don't know what would have happened, where I would have gone. Because what he said was that, look, do the right thing for the brand. Keep working hard onto it. And don't get frustrated because there's one obstacle you've hit on the other hand. You just have to, what he meant was, you just have to have the patience and resilience. And that comes back to the point I earlier made to you, that one of the key factors of success is ability to withstand stress and resilience.
Absolutely.
And really, that is what was required. So that was a bad example of where I wasn't going well. I'll give you a good example. And again, I don't want to name the client, but he will probably understand who I'm talking to. He was on
it's
soaps.
A good client, so you can name him.
He was on no, I don't think it's fair to name him, but he was on soaps, and actually specifically Liril that we were working on. Everybody said he's a very tough client, and they all had different impressions. In an agency, the gossip about a client spreads very fast. ये बंदा ऐसा है, ये बंदा ऐसा है, and all that, right? So I was already primed up. तू तो फंस गया, तू तो अभी इसके साथ है. And believe you me, I had one of the best relationships with him. We went to each other's houses. We knew each other well enough. He completely trusted me with the brand, and together he rose very well in his life, and I had equally benefited from it. We did some of the best work on that, and Liril became the largest selling soap, premium soap at that time. And we did some of the best work together. There was absolutely, it is because everybody has their own idiosyncrasies, but it is about forming that trust and forming that relationship. And it got to a level where I would tell him, let's do it this way. And he would say, just go ahead and do it. And till I started getting scared, I don't want to carry the entire burden. He said, I'm there, I'll back you, don't worry. So just go ahead and do it. And because of that, I think we got 5x more done, and he got 5x more value out of the agency than what we otherwise would have. And I really appreciate, those. And the relationships still stand. Like I told you, my Madras clients, Mr. Murli, who was the CEO or the owner, MD of Hindu. Even today, if I meet him with a lot of respect, and he has a lot of regard. We haven't worked together for 20-25 years. Right? Okay. Maruti, so many places, you go to see, it's such a delightful feeling. Clients that you've worked with, they've almost become your friends.
Absolutely.
In many ways. So I think that's for a client servicing person, forming that relationship and trust is key, and that only comes by consistently delivering success on the brand. In all of this, you have to remember, it's not the client who's important, it's the brand that's
important. Correct. So because even the client and the agency work for
both will only benefit if the brand works well. Right?
Absolutely. Now, coming back to initiative media, because you said those were the early days of media, was sort of just in its early days. Any notable deals or sponsorships, or what have you?
Well,
the very
media
deals that you've structured?
The very first gold MV was given to us. I'll give you 2-3 examples. Britannia had a brand called 50/50.
Oh yeah, the biscuit.
The biscuit. And nobody had sponsored Third Umpire. So when Third Umpire happened, we put up 50/50 ka pack going aage piche. Now think about it. It's a perfect 50/50. After that, many people have done it, but it's a perfect 50/50.
How did this idea come about? Was it
somebody in our Bangalore team, I think, had thought about it on that. But the difficulty in ideas like these is to convince the channel, because whenever you're doing something for the first time, it's a very difficult deal to do. And those days, you also had stalwarts on the, on the channel side. So people like Raj Nayak and Sumantro and Peter Mukherjee and so on. And you had a very good relationship and a rapport with them. And you'd sit across the table, have a cup of coffee or a drink or whatever, and say, "Look, I've got this idea." "No, ye to ho hi nahi sa. Yaar, karna to hai. Abhi tu bata kaise karna hai. Ye itna." And the clients were very supportive. Mr. Sunil Alag, who was the sort of MD of Britannia, or the CEO of Britannia at that time, he was a courageous guy. He would say, go take Vikram Kaushik. He was the marketing head, and they would say, go take the decision, go do it. And we were the first guys who did it and got a gold MV.
Yeah, because that's very notable.
Yeah, but just think of it, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect, this thing. So the first ever gold MV was given to us on that. I'll give you another example. There was a website called India.com, INDYA.com.
Correct. It belonged to the Star Group at that point of time.
No, it was Microland Group, which is a client. And Sunil Lulla was their CEO.
Okay.
Who later on was the BARC CEO also, etc. Right? So he was the CEO, and they were. So we convinced Times of India for the day of their launch. The first for Times of India, they had never done a jacket until that time. The first page was entirely blank, and it said something like that: for the first time in 158 years, the news is not on the front page but on the back page, something to that effect. I'm just paraphrasing it. And it was a fully blank page with this small thing, and when you turn around you see India.com that has been launched within hours of the newspaper being distributed. So normally around 6:37 the newspapers start getting distributed. By 8 o'clock or 8:30 their servers crashed. It was such a big thing. It was such a big hassle getting this through Times, because they'd never done it, and it went all the way up to Sameer and Vineet Jain, who finally took this. So Pradeep Guha was he used to be the guy to go to. So we went through all the ranks. Then we finally went to Pradeep Guha. I had a few meetings, convinced him that, look, this is something that we must do. This is going to be good for you guys, something new. He got convinced, but this is one of the rare things. He said, look, I'm going to have to consult my my bosses also. This is not this buck doesn't end here. Because, for Times of India, its front page and masthead in those days was sacrosanct, never done in 150 years. We did that. And then, of course, today you have jacket cube, but that's the thing about innovation, right? Correct. Once you do it on that. So I think these were one or two very notable kind of things in media that one did in those days. But it's not just, so these are innovations and therefore they strike out. But I think in media it's again more relationships than you think of. It's about discipline. At the end of the day, if you're not going to deliver efficiency to your client, he's never going to thank you. You can give him any innovation, but he's never going to thank you. He'll run out of budget and his brand won't perform, right? And being able to do that consistently day in and day out, and making sure that it is as painless and as error-free as it possibly can. A lot of effort, energy, team building goes into that. Ultimately, it's people, boss. You can say whatever you want, whether it's innovation, whether you may have any tools, any bit. If you don't have the right team, you can't do it. And to build and retain that team is always key. And for me, media was absolutely new. I had never dealt with media. I mean, I dealt with media people, but never sort of, that closely. So that was a different experience.
Then moving on to Dentsu, how did the Dentsu?
Well, before that, actually, what happened was that again, my then chairman Prem Mehta, he came back to me and he said that, look, we have many businesses which are all scattered over. We had Lin Opinion, which was PR. I wanted to launch Linterland, which was rural marketing.
Okay.
I did my first JV with an outdoor company, RN Initiative. We had Lintas personal direct marketing. And I opened a few, like Lintertainment, which is about this thing. So I brought them all together and we formed IMAG, Integrated Marketing Action Group, which was basically what you now call as 360 marketing or whatever. And suddenly IMAG did, so I left media, I went over to IMAG. IMAG started doing brilliantly well because we had, it was 360. It had creative, it had media when we could, it had PR, it had direct marketing, it had all of that. And shortly after that, we had second agency called SSCNB Lintas. That was going through a little bit of a tough time, wasn't doing very well. But it had good clients like Videocon and some others. So I also then became the president of SSCNB. So I was handling SSCNB Lintas and the IMAG group. And again, we were lucky that became the unit of the year in that particular year. So those businesses did very well. And around that time, IPG was buying over the entire stake of whatever the Truss had from Lintas, and there was a bit of a management change going on, and there was some of the people were leaving, etc. Around that time, I got an opportunity from Dentsu. That time it wasn't Dentsu; it was called Aegis Media.
Got it.
Aegis Media was one of the largest independent media outdoor digital company, headquartered in UK, and they were looking for somebody in India. And I said that, look, your India operation is too small; it's not going to work for me. So they gave me Southeast Asia to look after, India plus Southeast Asia.
Got
So
it.
as a starting point.
So actually, one thing, I'll just want to pause you for a moment now. I want to have one question, then I'll come back to Dentsu. So one is about this client pitch. So because in agencies, everybody's pitching to clients to get business. Can you give us example of one pitch where it was very memorable even till this day?
I'll give you a pitch which I thought we would lose, but somehow we won it. So, okay, so we had. I remember I told you we had the ITC account in media, and when I was in Lintas, and that was a very prestigious account and also very big and profitable account. They used to take all the back covers of India Today and all those big magazines in those days, which had lakhs of circulation and inside covers of those magazines and stuff. So, and it was a very complex client to handle, also very challenging, because print means you're talking about so many languages, so many editions. Cigarettes even then had some restrictions, so it was a very difficult, complex, but very enjoyable account to handle. And we had that account for 6 or 7 years, right?
You were the incumbent.
We were the incumbent, and then a pitch was called. Now, usually it's hard to defend a pitch when after some time boredom sets in, something
Correct.
has not got
They
right.
want
You know how it is.
fresh ideas.
Client wants a change, fresh
Correct.
ideas, and so on. So we made that. We called it the 7-year pitch, like how you have the 7-year itch, acknowledging the fact that there would be something in the relationship on that, and we had made it like a cinema. So when the client came in, he almost got a ticket and got ushered to his seat, and then we ran him through the reel of the trailer and the reel of what had happened before and of what was going to come in. And that pitch worked, and that really saved our skin, because our Calcutta office particularly was almost entirely dependent upon ITC in those days. That was really
So it was like an experiential
experiential
for the client.
As a pitch, right?
Wow.
Another example of everybody thinks of a pitch as a big bang. One day you go in, you make a presentation, great presentation,
It's like
and
you
you won
open a
it.
PowerPoint to make your
Done and
slides.
you won it.
and-
That is absolutely not true. A pitch is a culmination of 10 years of hard work, or many years of hard work. I'll give you an example. I used to handle some of the Maruti business in Lintas. Different set of clients then, because clients change, etc. Then when I came over to Aegis, later on became Dentsu Aegis, Dentsu had maybe 2 or 3 out of their 16 brands ka just the creative business. So we started focusing on it. I had some of my old relationships. I put together a team. Amit Wadhwa, who used to run the creative, had a good team with them, good rapport with them. So we started winning more of their creative brands. So from something like 2 or 3 out of 16, we probably had reached 12 or 13 out of 16, right? We slowly ousted all the other agencies and consolidated their creative. Around that time, there was a media pitch which was announced.
Okay.
And then we went in and we said that, look, we've consolidated creative. It's worked very well for you. Here's what we're going to do for you in media. And when you work media and creative together, it's going to work magic. We got all their media business, and that is a huge business to have.
Wow. The entire Maruti
Thereafter,
media.
so almost the entire Maruti creative, all of Maruti's media, and thereafter digital started coming up, and Dentsu had, by the time I had made Dentsu India very big in digital, that was the leading thing. We started picking up a lot of their digital and CRM business, a lot of their out-of-home business. So that was a very satisfying, so it was actually a pitch that lasted over 20 years, because it was relationships that one is building, and it's not that one day you've gone in and got everything. You first have a few brands, then you have a few more, then you have a few more, then you got a lot of creative brands, then you start moving towards more of media brands, etc. So there are various types of pitches, and never think of a pitch as a one-day affair. A pitch is also never won or lost, because nothing. You may win the pitch today, 2 years later it'll be back on the block. You may lose the pitch today. Keep very good tabs of the client. Keep good relationships. If it's a good client, keep at it, because sooner than later it's a cycle. It'll come back. So don't think of your career as a job. Think of it as a career. You're in it for a long
Late
haul.
test match, not a one day.
It is a test match. It's a marathon. It's not a one day, and it's a circle. It goes around. Somebody today, you may think the agency is really doing wonders. Your competitor is doing wonders. ये तो कभी आएगा ही नहीं account. In 2 years' time, different set of clients, different set of circumstances, market changes. Something at your end has changed. You may again get a chance to do it.
Have you come across clients who are only looking at price as a metric, or they're looking at the entire value? Because
I don't think there's any client who looks at only price as a metric, because if he or she does, they will be out of business very soon. But price is a very important metric, particularly in media, because everybody has their own numbers to deliver. Everybody wants a maximum bang for their buck. If you go to buy a shirt, you'll make sure that you're getting the best price for it. If you want to buy 20 shirts, you'll make sure you're getting a damn good price for that. So there's nothing wrong in the client wanting the best price. It's your job as a media agency to deliver that, right? But I think what clients need to appreciate, and what agencies need to educate them on, that it's not about getting the lowest price, it's about getting the best value. And getting the best value includes, ultimately, you cannot forget that you're in the advertising business, right? So if you may get the cheapest ads, but if it's not going to touch your consumer and not going to make a difference to them, it's wasted. Even if you've got them at 1/10 the price, it's a waste.
Absolutely.
Right? On that. So it's about what is the best value that you have got, and you've got to prove it to the client that if you do it this way, you are going to get the best value, and therefore you're going to retain your maximum customers or make your maximum sales or whatever. And that trust gets earned over decades.
Any example of penny pinching clients, and you kind of knew this? These guys are going to sort of slip down this slippery slope.
There are, and I have walked out of many of those pitches. There was one client which we later on actually won by a twist of fate. Many years ago, I was also actively involved in the Advertising Agencies Association of India. I later on became their president as well. Many years ago, that client is an MNC client, said that if you want to pitch for my client, you have to pay me a pitch fee. You pay me 5 lakhs of rupees if you want to pitch for it.
Really?
I said, go to hell, I'm not going to pay you. And then all of us got together in the industry. One good thing about us in the industry is that while we compete particularly the media part of the industry, while we compete very vigorously, but on some areas we come on, like the common minimum program, we come together as well.
So common ground.
And then I spoke to a few people, and everybody agreed, and everybody was saying, and the one or two agencies that were agreeing, we told them not to agree. And we said that we are not going to pay you. So I had refused to pitch anyway for that. But
which client was that?
I don't think it's fair to name them, but I will hint it to you. Many years later, in Dentsu itself, it was a very large FMCG client which came back, and we won that business, and we ran it for quite a few years. Large, huge, humongous client. So there are times like these where you have to walk off. There's a new trend that has started of almost like an auction of media rather than a pitch. So after they'll give you a certain media plan, particularly in out of home or in TV and sometimes in print, and you're almost expected to reverse quote, in the sense you may say, okay, I'll deliver this plan at 2 crores. I'll say, no, I'll deliver it at 1.95. Somebody else will say, I'll deliver it at 1.75. You're shooting yourself.
Like a reverse auction that's happening over
like a reverse auction, right? You're shooting yourself in your foot if you agree to do this. Now, agencies are always under pressure for revenue, and I understand that there are reasons they have to do it. But the moment you start thinking long term, you'll realize that this client is not worth you having. If you've lost the client, you've dodged a bullet. It's better to lose such a client than to have this client, because see, you will make no money on it. The client will still expect everything from you. You'll bust your gut giving them your best. It's going to become a lose-lose. Sooner than later, there will be disappointment on both ends. And you're not an NGO. You're not in this business for this thing. You want to make profits, right? Yeah. So you've got your numbers to deliver. Correct. If a client can be very proud and get onto TV and say, my profitability is now increased to so much, I don't know why agencies are on their back foot and keep crying and saying and are so sheepish about that. I'm running a business as an agency. I'm always very proud to say I'm the most profitable agency in the country, because I'm running a business. I'm not running an NGO. So we have to get out of that mindset that agency business is a very friendly business, and हम तो आपके दोस्त ही हैं, हम तो आपके tukdon pe palte hain type kind of a thing. It's a serious business. I'm running a business. I'm more worried about my profitability, as worried about my profitability as you are of your profitability. So of course I'm going to do it. If you're not going to give me an adequate fee, it's not going to work for me. Then I'm going to have to find other ways to make that, because I'm running a business out here. So it's better you give me a fair fee and we agree. If you don't want to do it, you're probably not the right client for me. And
True.
there'll be others who'll be happy to do it. Go to them. I think that's always been my approach, and I think it's worked well. If you stand your ground, it works well.
Absolutely.
I was happy to be known as one of the most expensive agencies to work with, and perhaps one of the most profitable agencies to work with, because if it wasn't profitable, I wouldn't do that work. It's
Got
as
you.
simple as that.
Okay. So Ashish, now let's talk about Dentsu. Now, how did the Dentsu, juggernaut happen? Because you started with Aegis, and then there was a lot of acquisitions that happened over. Can you talk us through some of those acquisitions?
Sure.
Some
So like
interesting stories behind them.
I was mentioning to you, Aegis had approached me and they said that, look, we want to. They had actually launched in India, hadn't done very well. They had about, when I took over, about 35, 40 people. It was a loss-making operation, terrible reputation, and so on and so forth. From there, in 2019, when I left India to become the APAC CEO for Dentsu Aegis Network, we had grown to 3,500 people. So we grew in about 10, 12 years to, in about 11 years, we grew from 40 people to 3,500 people, from loss making to hugely profitable. And I think a lot of it, I was coming into the market 100 years after my competitors. WPP had been here since some 1880 or 1890 or something. IPG had come here in 1912 or some such year. Like somebody had been for 100 years, somebody had been for 80 years. I was 80 years late to the party. Right? so we had Aegis, then Dentsu acquired Aegis. Then so there was a Dentsu operation in India and there was an Aegis operation in India. We put them both together and formed the Dentsu Aegis network. We brought all of them together. And one of the things I realized was that, look, as such a late entrant in the market with such a small size, like I told you, at 40, 50 people, if I'm going to do the same thing that my competitors are doing, I will definitely lose that game, right? WPP probably had, even at that time, 5,000 people. I had less than 50 people. How am I ever going to compete with them? So I said, so a very interesting thing happened, and I have to thank Sam. I have to tell him one day for that. I had gone, Sam does this beautiful
Sam Balchara.
Yeah,
Okay.
pitch media
The annual report. Yeah.
right? And on that particular year, and he does a great analysis. Madison does a very good analysis of, this is the size of the market, this is the TV, so he said, this is the TV, this is the print, this is the cinema, this is the outdoor, and then there is digital, which is 2%. I said, look, this is a great opportunity. All my competitors, and he was right, digital was only 2-3%. Are looking at it as 2-3%. Ye to we also ran kind of hai, isko chodo, right? But because I was also running Southeast Asia for Aegis Media, I had seen how digital was galloping in countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, etc., China stories, etc. So that helped being on the Asia Pacific level and on a global level, seeing how the consumers were changing over there. And I said that the youngsters today are going to sooner than later start behaving in that same way. So I went heavy into digital. And now the thing I'd launched Isobar. Shamsuddin Jasani, he used to work for
Excuse me.
he used to work for Hangama. So he had come to sell Hangama to me, that why don't you use it? I said, tu aaja mere paas, tu chalu kar isko. So I'd started the digital operation with him. But then I realized that if I'm going to wait this way and try to do organic growth, it's going to take too long. I was in a hurry. I'm not going to become big unless I do some inorganic growth. So I put my money where my mouth was and acquired what was then the leading search and performance agency called Communicate2, run by Vivek Bhargav.
Correct.
Who's been on your show before. And that was a wonderful acquisition because it gave me good experience through acquisitions. Vivek was a great ambassador for us on that. So the Communicate2 became my prospect, and that became the leading search and performance agency in India as a part of our group. And also, he stayed on well after his acquisition was done. So he became a great ambassador for us as well. Thereafter, we acquired several others, and I'm not saying this necessarily in chronological order, but companies like Wat Consult, which was then the leading social
listening tool.
Not just listening tool, they were social media leaders and then became full service digital, right? So we acquired them. And many of these companies, after we acquired, with Rajiv Dingra used to run, who now runs our DNX network, Rebid. So many of these companies, after we acquired them, grew 5x, 10x in their revenues and their profits because the synergies came in, being a part of the group. And then we acquired Sokrati, we acquired Milestone Brandcom. So outdoor was the other area which I had identified as big. So we launched Posterscope, which was our own outdoor company. Aegis' outdoor company, Dentsu Aegis' outdoor company. And then we acquired Milestone. So we became the number one leaders. So both outdoor and digital took us, we just became huge leaders in the market. We were the largest customers of Google, largest customers of Facebook, largest players in outdoor. So I didn't concentrate on TV and print, which my competitors were doing so much at that time.
Got it.
But this started growing, and I had an empty field at that nobody else was looking at it.
Got you.
And we became number one
So
in
that
that
is a
bid.
useful insight because you had a vantage point of
Absolutely.
position to see your other companies in Southeast Asia, and then
And exactly 6 years later, I attended another one of Madison's very beautiful this thing. And by that year, the digital had already become 1/4 of the market. Today, it's the single largest medium.
Single largest.
Right? So in the fastest growing medium, I had the lead, and that helped. And once you have that kind of momentum, then the other businesses also started doing well, and we were able to package them together. So I had started what I had called was one P&L.
Okay.
So our thing was, we had 23 companies in India, and our idea was that you can come in through any one of the windows or doors into our house, into our family, but when you come in, you have access to the whole house. So you want to use high-end creative service, you had Taproot, Aggie, Paddy, right? The best of the creative guys. Or you wanted to use digital creative, you had Siddharth Rao and his team doing Dentsu Web Chutney, which then became the agency of the world at Cannes. They got Titanium, and the first company from India, the only company ever to have got the agency
Wonderful.
of the world award. Or you come in through the media side or outdoor side or search and performance side. But once you come into the Dentsu Aegis family, which later on became Dentsu, we dropped the Aegis bit. Once you come into the Dentsu family, you had access to the entire suite of services that were being offered. So that was the one P&L bit. And I had very early on announced, and Bhaskar Das, who's also been on your show, actually gave me a good write-up on a good photograph of that. I still have it somewhere. So I had announced that we will be the number 2 players in this market by 2017.
okay.
Everybody had laughed because it was unthinkable here, because such a huge WPG.
So this was
of course.
which year when you made the
I think
announcement?
this was around 2013
Okay,
or
so
14.
4-5 years
Yeah.
before.
And by the end of 2017, and we got there by March of 2017 itself, right?
Spot on.
Earlier. So we
Okay.
had said end of December of 2017, we got there onto that, which was an unimaginable thing. Nobody could ever think that, from 40, 50 people did. So it was like we just kind of raced through the market on that bit. Even in terms of profile, I mean, Dentsu's profile started building up. We started getting, once you have momentum, clients start coming on to you.
Ashish, when you made all these acquisitions at Dentsu, I'm sure that if you made 5 acquisitions, you probably evaluated 10 or 20 of them before you made those 5. What are the main things that you look for in a founder to acquire him, and why did you make that bet on that individual or that company or that technology? Can you just sort of talk us about that?
So I've not made 5. I've done 24,
Whatever, so, yeah,
24 acquisitions.
24,
in
but
my
you must have
career.
evaluated maybe 50 or 60.
No, probably more than 200, 250
There you
very
go.
closely, right? I think I've done the most acquisitions in advertising. Perhaps Martin Sorrell may have done more, I don't know. But at least in this part of the world, 14 of them are in India and 10 of them in Southeast Asia. So done or overseen or been a part of 24 acquisitions. I think to me, when you're doing an acquisition, first of all, there are these standard things which everybody knows. There has to be a strategic fit. You never do an acquisition for buying profits or revenues. That's not. It has to be doing an acquisition cannot be your strategy. It has to be something that boosts your strategy, that gives your strategy a fillip, right? So you first of all have to have a strategy. So my strategy was that I'm going to become a digital leader because I believe digital is going to grow. So therefore, I started looking for companies that are leaders in the digital world and which aspects of that will grow. So first of all, it has to be a fit. Everybody spends a lot of time on numbers. Now, numbers are very important. right? But they're not the most important thing. The most important thing is chemistry, because most of these companies in advertising in our space are very dependent upon one or two or three people teams, right? There are a lot of people in the company, but it's a top 3, 4, 5 people who matter a lot,
Handful of people who make the
and
difference.
they are the ones who make the difference. They have to have a similar set of values as to what you do. They have to think of it this way: you're going to be sitting on the table with them every day. For it's like a marriage. You're going to be sitting with them every day. You have to think long term for the next 15, 20 years. If there's going to be jig, if there's going to be no meeting of mind, it's never going to work. He's not going to be happy, you're not going to be happy, right? So to me, the most important part is not the money. It is very important. The accountants will take care of it. If it's too expensive, they won't do it. If it is too cheap, the guy won't sell it. Water finds its own level. You get to that level. But I spend a lot of time in understanding the attitude of the person, the comparability of the person.
So you do lunches, dinners, breakfast with them?
Lots of time.
All of those things.
Several meetings. Yes, several meetings. Spend a lot of time. Are they going to be compatible? Some people are really good, but they're not great team players. I didn't want an organization of prima donnas. I wanted an organization where everybody could work together, have your own domain, be an expert in what you're doing, but the larger thing is the one P&L which we are all focused to. And I had made it this way that you sink and swim together. So all 3,500 of us, nobody got a bonus if the country didn't meet its numbers. Your unit may have done very well, so your personal performance may be very good, but you're not. The bonus of the company depends on the company doing the bonus. So everybody's intent, you try to, align them towards one bit. Otherwise, there are too many all agencies are struggling with internal turfs, with internal silos. Then they're trying to break them down, etc. Because I was building it afresh, and because I was building it, and we were starting from zero, I think we were able to build it relatively silo free. There were still issues and hassles, but we were able to tackle a lot of those issues and get people aligned. Also, if you give them a higher vision, every year I would do besides the numbers and targets which are set with the global guys, etc., I would do a very ambitious target and say, one was, I remember one year was so I used to take all my people, including whether it's a secretary or a lowest rung people or the highest rung people, and sometimes maybe 1,000 people plus, to an annual conference. We've had it in Hong Kong, in Dubai, in Bangkok, and we started off in Mud Island because that's all we could afford and this thing. But and many people made their passports and traveled for the first time. But in those conferences were very important because we were able to agree upon a common goal. I remember one year we were relatively very small, and we said that next 3 years or 2 years something, we're going to be DPTP 25. Double the people from what we are today, triple the profits from what we are today, and 2,500 crores billings.
Wow.
And next year we had a DPTP billion. The next one was we'll get to double the people from where we then were, triple the profits from where we then were, and $1 billion of billing on that. So that way you align your full 1,000, 2,000 people into one direction. And because I was the nucleus, I was the guy who was bringing it up, and they were all leaders in their own rights, everybody was aligning and going towards that. It wasn't hassle-free. There were still skirmishes, and one of my key roles and tasks was to, make sure that the skirmishes, be the adult in the room when these children are fighting. But that, I think that helped a lot. So to me, to answer your question, the alignment of the values. So one of our values was ambition. We're ambitious people. So if there was a guy who's sort of by now tired, he's done it, his company's done well, he's now just wants to give up and go away, etc. He may be very good, but he's not the right guy for me. Because we're a hungry, ambitious, agile business that we were building. So those values we had actually written on the pillars in our walls. So agile, responsible.
You think ambition is innate or ambition can be created? What is your experience in that?
I think some part of it is innate, but a lot of it does have to be created. But before you do the creation of values, you have to have a vision. So if your values are moving towards that vision, and if people have bought into that vision, I think that generally does happen. But there are also some characteristics. So when you interview a person, most people look for their skills. I don't look for their skills at all. I don't bother much about their skills, because by the time that candidate has come to me, somebody has already looked at it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have reached my table. I spend a lot of time understanding the person, their background, their education, their family background, their family values, their values, And that's when because I believe inherently a tiger doesn't change his stripes. You can modify yourself, you can enhance your good qualities, you can suppress your bad qualities, but there's some inherent qualities I believe are always come out at some stage, right? So to that
And what are the
extent,
qualities that you look for if one were to sort of?
agility for sure, ethics of the highest order, okay, responsibility, ambition, and collaboration. These were some of the important things, because if you don't have these, I'm never going to be able to work with you, because I can't work with people who are not agile. I'm the type who you got 80% right, get out and don't procrastinate, don't do analysis paralysis, get into the market, see how it's working, modify it, get on with it. I don't need 1000 presentations to keep on going, because the market is not waiting for you, right? So agility is key. If you don't have ambition, what's the point? And I started with 30 people. By the time I left India to go to Asia Pacific for my Asia Pacific role as the APAC CEO, India had 3,500, 4,000 people. So you can't go from 3,500 to 4,000 in 10 years unless you have, a huge ambition to do so,
Absolutely.
right? So those are, I think, that collaboration. I mean, if you don't have collaboration, you'll have an organization of prima donnas. The other beautiful thing of this whole experience was I had a galaxy of stars. All of them have either are running their own businesses or startups or CEOs in various companies, etc. But when they were working together with me, none of them left. Even after their earnout was over, they made hundreds of crores of rupees, but they didn't leave, right? Because why? Because one thing you have to remember, even when you do an acquisition, for the entrepreneur, the company is more than money. It is their baby. It's their life. And acquiring companies are heartless, because first thing you do is you tell him, okay, I'm going to buy out your company, from tomorrow your name is going to change. You got to get the guy to feel that, look, this is your company today. Tomorrow I may have its shares, but it is still your company.
Companies.
I want you to run it with the same passion and with the same bit. And if you give him or her that freedom, that independence, that support, that empowerment, there is no way they will leave, because
Vivek
that's
did
their
mention
baby.
that actually. Vivek in the podcast did mention about the degree of freedom and delegation.
That's right. You've got, who knows how to run his business better, the search and performance business better, Vivek or me? Who am I to teach him how to run his business? He's the guy who's built it, right?
Correct.
Or Rajiv, or Nabendu, who's done his outdoor business, or Anubhav, who's done Sokrati, which became one of our biggest companies, etc. Or we had a great team at Fractal, which was the best UI UX company, etc., etc. Right? They know how to run their business. You've got to empower them. You've got to give them the support and the space, and that, of course, within a certain boundary that you mutually agree, and let them continue to feel that it is their baby. So the joke was, the tenure of senior people is only 18 months, 24 months. People leave a lot. So how come in all the 12 years until I ran India, not one senior person had left, not one, 100%. So everybody used to ask me,
Wonderful.
how come this is, and that was one of the secrets of our success, why we did so well, right? I mean, I can name 20 leaders to
Everybody
you.
sort of stuck together. From
Why? How? So I used to joke that, look, I have their photographs and I have their wives' numbers. So kahan jayenge wo? But it's not that. It's because every person, irrespective, you could be a department, you could be a finance head, you could be a HR head or whatever. Every person must feel that they own that part of the business, and they must be empowered to run it the way they want. Of course, collectively to the benefit of the company. And I think that magic just worked beautifully
Got
in
it.
that period.
So Ashish, now moving on to the last section of the podcast, we'll just cover a few things on career development. You've had a stellar career. You've sort of rose to the topmost position in both the organizations that you worked, Lintas as well as Dentsu. If somebody is listening to you, a 25-year-old freshly minted MBA, what are the things that you would tell him or her? Top 3 or 5 things to keep in mind as somebody is embarking on this journey.
I think the first thing I would tell them is that, so don't focus on how much money you're going to make in the short run or whatever. Money will come. It's very important, but it'll come. Focus on being the best at what you do. It doesn't matter what part you have chosen. You may have chosen data and technology, you may have chosen creative, you may have chosen media or whatever. If you have chosen, let's say, creative, make sure you're the best creative person in the room. Right? And if you are that, I guarantee you, I am willing to lay a bet on it, money will come to you, fame will come to you, recognition will come to you. But you have to be convinced that you are absolutely the best person doing that. If you are a client servicing person, you're the best client servicing person. I'm willing, as an agency leader today, I'll be willing to pay 1 crore of rupees if I can get a new business guy who can get me business tomorrow, or even more. Right? Many of my leaders were paid multiple crore salaries. Why? Because they're the best at what they do. So, first thing is focus on becoming damn good at what you do, and that is very hard. It's easy to do it once, it's hard to do it over 30-40 years at a go, because the world's pace of change is very fast. So you have to keep yourself updated, you have to work very, very hard. Second thing is, people shy away from working hard. Now, I'm not saying that how many hours in a week you should work before it becomes another controversy. It's up to you how many hours you work. But if unless you work really, really hard, that 10,000 hours putting in kind of a story, you cannot become the best at what you do, and you cannot succeed if you don't do that. So you can't run away from sheer determination and hard work, right? And the third thing I will tell you is resilience. Advertising, in whichever form you are, is a service industry. It is a deadline oriented industry. It is a high pressure industry. If you're not resilient, it's not that you will not do well, you'll die. It's as simple as that. It is a very high stress game. I was working 16-18 hours a day. I was traveling 20-22 days a month, almost 365 days a year. It is a very hard game. And every day that you go, you have to bring your A game. You're meeting a new client, you're meeting a new candidate, you're in a new country, or whatever. You are meeting them for the first time or once in a while. You have to have your A game on. You cannot tell them, today I'm not in the mood, or मेरे को आज थोड़ा बुखार लग रहा है, or whatever, right? So that takes a lot to do it, and you will only be able to do it if you enjoy what you do. There
Absolutely.
has to be no difference between your work and your passion and your hobby. The work has to become your passion. Then do it like that. Whenever you don't want to do it, give it up. Then you relax. You go do whatever you want to do. But while you're at it, it's got to be your passion. It's got to be your bit, right? And the fourth thing is, you've got to be very responsible. Now, responsible is a wide word. Okay, there is a community around you. The first community is the ecosystem in which you operate. You have to contribute to the industry itself. If you're a leader in advertising, you have to, whether it is through associations like the Advertising Agency Association of India, or I was also the chairman of the Media Research Users Council, or you have to give your time to the ecosystem, because if the ecosystem develops, or get onto the BAG board, or depending upon your area of interest or your bit of which IAA, ad club, there are many this. You have to contribute back, Goa Fest, into that, because then the industry contributes to you as well. We have to grow that ecosystem. Take that a little wider. You have to look after the environment. You have to look after your people. You have to look after the stakeholders, etc. So, and most importantly, you're accountable to your shareholders. So the responsibility is a vast term, but you have to be responsible as you go, because a lot of people are in a hurry to do things, and they lose this responsibility bit. So I think this these things are important to remember. And I'll tell you something which is like a motto for me. My principal at the end of our 10th standard had shared this with us, and he had said that devotion to duty determines your destiny. Whatever you're doing at that time, at this moment, if your job is to do this podcast, then your devotion to, you have to be 100% committed and fully devoted to doing it. It doesn't matter what else you're doing in life.
Absolutely.
So every morning, every day when you come in, whatever is your duty at hand, you have to be devoted to that, literally devoted to it. And that will determine your destiny. People say luck plays an important role. Everything plays a role. I agree. I don't want to get into those debates. But your destiny, your luck, your everything depends upon how devoted, how passionate, and how involved you are. This is absolutely the best profession in the world. If I had to relive life, I would only do this, right? No 2 days are alike. Every day there is a new challenge. Every hour there's a new challenge. You'll remain ever engaged in this, provided you're passionate and you're enjoying it. The day you're not enjoying it, get out. But don't hang in there. I think you can't. This is not a business you can just hang in and while your time.
Correct. You got to be there, give your best.
Absolutely. So that's what I tell them.
Wonderful. What are the other things important to grow in a media advertising business? One is obviously all those 4 or 5 things that you told about. How about teamwork, motivation? How are those things important, and how do you build as you sort of go ahead?
Look, every business and more so advertising is a team sport and not an individual sport. I don't think there are places for prima donnas. When I started off in this career, we used to have these certain type of creative directors and all that would go for lunches for 4 hours and have idiosyncrasies, and I will only work at 2 a.m. or 5 a.m. in the morning or whatever. You do whatever the hell you want, you work whenever you want, but you've got to deliver at the end. There is no place for prima donnas. There is a team that is working. The credit is of the team, the losses of the team, right? So, therefore, all that is a given. There is no two ways about it. There is one thing, though, I will leave with you on a leadership level, and this is not just for advertising. This is true for everything, whether it is motivation, whether it is thing. I don't think the newer generation reads enough and reads wider, has knowledge wide enough, because we've started getting used to consuming snacking level content. We are very good at reading 30-second thing, flipping, going over that. The depth
40
of
word character, Twitter,
that's right.
all of these things.
Because of your, we live in a Twitter world, so to speak. But that habit of reading is getting lost, whether it's a physical book, Kindle, whichever form is separate. I prefer a physical book, but that's your preference. But if you don't read and you don't read wide enough and you're not up to date with everything, if you're a leader, if you want to be right at the top and you're sitting with a client tomorrow, you could be discussing anything from the Gaza situation to sanitation in UP to a film on the day, etc. And you must have enough knowledge. You can't, at senior levels, you can't faff your way through. If you're a faffer, you reach your glass ceiling very soon. If you want that and you want to remain at the top, read and read hell of a lot. Read wide, read history, read literature, read whatever interests you, but read, right? And be very well informed. The client will also respect you, your people will respect you, and that will make you a better leader. And everything that you're talking about, including motivation and everything, will come in from there. Because there are enough books on motivation, there are enough books on self-development on that. So if you can form the habit of reading, that will be your best friend throughout your, normally you have a 30 to 40 year kind of a career. So let's say I had a 36-year career. My best friend in this process were books. And I feel this generation is losing out on that by not having that best friend.
This is a TikTok generation.
There's a TikTok generation. It's very happy to consume snacky content, but is not willing to give that. Start with reading whatever interests you. It doesn't matter what, but start reading that and see how your leadership changes and see how your outlook to life in general changes.
Got it. So lastly, Ashish, as you wind up, have you seen Mad Men, the series?
I've seen Mad Men.
What are your thoughts on that?
It is very appropriate for the time that it was set in. I have actually lived through that, so I can relate a hell of a lot. And each of us can relate to characters who one thought. And you see a little bit of yourself in some of those characters as
Which
you
one
go.
do you see yourself?
No, I'm not going I'm definitely not. Well, you know my answer, but I'm not going to give it to you. But it does very accurately represent what life was then. But I must tell you, fast forward 2 or 3 decades later, advertising is no way like that, the Mad Men era. I was lucky to have started my career in the Mad Men era and ended it in the Math Men era. So I've been able to see both the ends of the spectrum, and frankly, I've enjoyed both the ends of it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you for the wonderful conversation. Perfect.
My pleasure and my delight. Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.